The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is sponsored by Two Fat Lardies, Miniature Wargames with Battle Games magazine, and with the generous donations of you, the listener. A huge thank you to Tom Privitera, John Michael, Peter West, Alex McIntosh, and Glenn Oberhauser. Guys, your generous support helps keep this show possible. Thanks once again. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode 156. Iron Cross. With hosts Neil Shuck and Mike Whitaker, and guests Darryl Morton and Stuart McCorquadale. This podcast was recorded on the 23rd of September 2015. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. I'm Neil Shuck and this evening I'm joined by Mike Whitaker. Hello Mike.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Oh, not so bad. Sitting here surrounded by yet more eye drops and a small pile of polystyrene packing peanuts since I've just unpacked the Kings of War Kickstarter.
Oh, the box that you were talking about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so basically one Mega Elf Stormwind army, a rather nice hardback rulebook, which is smaller than I expected in terms of physical length and width, and a smaller copy of the rulebook. That's all I pledged for. So watch this space.
Right, okay. So when you say small army, about how many figures is that then?
Let's have a look, shall we? This is real and live, folks, he says, picking up the bag off the floor.
Thumpy, thumpy, thumpy.
Thumpy, 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 Russell. 10 and 5 and... Oh, yeah, there's about 100 figures there, I think. Well, there's 125 bases, so draw your own conclusions.
All right, and that's, what, one army?
That's one big elf army.
Right, okay. So you haven't bought two armies, you just bought one?
No, there's enough people down the club, I didn't think there was much point.
Oh, I see. So several of you are playing Kings of War already.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We have a Mantic Pathfinder down the club, so...
Yes, I was forgetting, yes. Silly me.
Yes. So you bought anything nice?
Have I bought anything nice? I have succumbed to a couple of bits and pieces.
Oh, dear.
If you've been following my blog, I've just pledged to an interesting little Kickstarter by a guy called Kerry. I think it's Kerry Designs, who are doing some rather nice 3x3 mats. Rather interestingly, they're being produced. The guy who runs the company actually works in high-end sportswear. So they're using the same process that they use to print onto high-end sportswear. So it's the same sort of stuff that I imagine it's like, especially when they're printing like the sponsor logos onto football shirts and the way they produce things like the big American football shirts and all that sort of thing now, using that process for producing terrain mats. But it just happened. It happened to coincide with the fact that we just released Frostgrave, and they did a 3x3 mat. So they do a 3x3 mat. They just produced a nice cobblestone one, which would be ideal for Frostgrave, and it's £19 including postage.
Ooh, nice. Might get some of those.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, because Deca Studios, our current mat of choice between myself and Mr. Hobbs, are lovely, but the equivalent mat for Deca Studios, once you include postage, is almost twice the price. So that's why I thought, these look interesting.
Yeah, I looked at Deep Cut as well when Mike mentioned them, and I have to admit I've been tempted by those as well. But these look really nice.
As I say, they're it's something different. It's a new venture for this guy. I know he's run a couple of Kickstarters before. That looked quite interesting. So did that. Other than that, I've been buying bits of scenery, a couple of resin machine gun posts and gun emplacements, which there are surprisingly few in number for 15mm. You have to really hunt around for them.
I picked up some off a guy on eBay who I'll make sure gets into the show notes because they were quite nice and very easy to put together. Yeah. Just little sandbagged D shapes.
The stuff I actually had because I need a couple of actual emplacements. I ended up buying the Beirut ones off EM4 Miniatures, which are nice, but they're blooming expensive. You've got the machine gun post, for example. It's got to be. Oh, hang on, I've got to get my ruler out now.
It's all live, this, folks. Can you tell?
It is all live. Right, okay, so this is... let's have a look. It's about 60 centimetres wide, 55 centimetres wide. It is about 75 centimetres deep. Sorry.
I hope you mean millimetres.
Yeah, millimetres.
Otherwise, that's one hell of a gun in place.
No, millimetres. And it's about 35 mil tall. But... including that it's about it's about 45 mil tall, including the removable top.
But that'll fit something like a 15 mil Pat 40 very nicely.
Well, yeah, and it's designed. And it's the classic kind of lozenge shaped deep. They do two. They do like a lozenge shaped machine gun poster, but they also do like an open top one, which you can drop something like a flak 38 into, and if the Westwind flak 38 or their quad 20 mil AA gun drops wonderfully straight into the middle of that. But the big one, like the one I just described, is about is 10 quid.
How?
Yeah, it's quite expensive. The smaller ones about six, but yeah, not cheap. Very nice, but not cheap. That's
what you pay for.
Well, yes. So bought a couple of those. I've been the saga of the rivers is almost complete. I've been finishing off my rivers, and they would have been finished except for the fact that I had a conversation on Twitter with a few people on Saturday saying I bought some these sticky on tufts to act as reeds, but I've only got kind of a couple of colour green ones. It's like, and I was looking at, I kind of need some brown ones and some straw coloured ones and stuff, don't I? Really, really, really. Do you think I can get away without it? And people went, no, you need to mix it up.
Yep. Speaking of Twitter, some of you may have noticed what I was doing over the weekend, in that we finished off our 100 Days campaign at the club on Gary's very large 15 yes. by 7 table.
Oh, yes.
I did say that. That 28 mil figures.
Yeah, that looked absolutely stunning.
It was absolutely stonking. And a public thank you to Gary for hosting us and painting more Napoleonic figures than any one man should be capable of in the time he appears to have had available to him. It was a stunning day. If you haven't found my Twitter feed, which is @TATM_blog, I think something like the last 20 posts are photos from it. And like me, you will probably drool.
Yes, it did look stupendous. I mean, everything shut off. It was really, really cool.
We think the Allies lost, sadly.
Oh.
The general consensus at the point we paused was that we'd probably hold, but at the end of the day we were going to have to retreat towards Brussels, sadly.
Oh, but it's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, afraid so. So there's a little French bloke one.
Oh. Mind you, as he appears so often to do.
Afraid so.
But no, it looked absolutely stunning. It really did.
So time was had by all.
Because you've been busy as well, haven't you? Because you've been doing some final updates for the for Harewood that we were talking about the other week.
Done about final, but we've got another website update up. I ought to correct something I said last time, which is that Andy Hawes will actually be running a demo of the new Osprey Colonial rules. The men who would be kings.
Ooh.
We may even have Dan Mersey there for the day. I can now say that. So expect lots of heroic daring do with British Indian forces and the wily Pathan on the northwest frontier.
All right. So are these rules actually written by Dan?
I believe so.
Oh, cool. Okay. Oh, that sounds good. I should look forward to that. I mean, we need to speak to we need to speak to Dan, because we need to get him on the show and chat about things like. Because I mean, we haven't done a Lion Rampant review yet, have we?
No,
that's on that. And of course, Dragon Rampant is out in November.
Mm-hmm.
And we could really do with getting Dan on the show.
Or you could come down to the club where we've been playing both.
That's a point. I'm not. We are meant to come down to your club at some point, aren't we?
Indeed, yes. But hark, is that our guests I hear?
Enough of this frivolity. Well,
indeed.
Yes, we'll get a chance to chat again in a minute. But in the meantime, what we'll do, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be chatting to Darryl Morton and Stuart McCorquadale from Great Escape Games.
The eagles have gone. Britain lies defenceless in a cruel world. Since the birth of our Lord, it has been 456 years. What sins have we committed to bring this punishment to Britain? I speak, of course, of the Saxons. They came as allies, but now they seek conquest. The lands of the Britons lie ravaged before them. Blood runs red in our island. We need a leader to stand against them. We need a man to bring together the Britons in common cause. We seek a Dux Britanniarum.
Right, that's enough of that. Dux Britanniarum from Two Fat Lardies. They really are very good.
Well, we'd like to welcome back to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast, Stuart McCorquadale.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome to the show for the first time, Darryl Morton.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, welcome both. These are the guys behind Great Escape Games.
Yep.
So very pleased to have you both on the show. As we've hinted at the start of the show, we're here talking about a new set of rules coming out from Great Escape, which it's been a while, hasn't it? So I mean, it's probably 18 months.
Well, no, with Salute we released the third expansion for Dead Man's Hand,
Yes.
but before that, it was 2 years before that Dead Man's Hand came out.
Obviously, had a couple of expansions, but first new game for 2.5 years. Ooh, so good stuff, excellent. So this is going to be this is Iron Cross, yeah.
Yes.
Right, so we're back to World War II.
Where we first belong. It's our true roots, I think.
Well, I mean, obviously with a name like Great Escape Games, I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did. Of course, it was Rules of Engagement was your first rule set, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
It's 2005 now, I think.
Oh right, okay. Crikey.
Was it really that long ago?
I was going to
10
say,
years, crikey, wow. Those 10 years have gone so quickly.
But before we go any further, as our regular listeners will know, when we have guests on the show, we get them to introduce ourselves. Now, Stuart's already been on the show. It's been a while, but we've had Stuart on the show talking about Dead Man's Hand, but we haven't spoken to Darryl before. So before we get into the meat of what we're going to talk about this evening, Darryl, how did you get into gaming?
Oh, that's a good question. It started probably like most people when I was a kid, which is quite a long time ago. Maybe 30-something years ago, I was playing Warhammer. Mm-hmm. I think first edition. Maybe someone will pull me up on the exact date, but yeah, it was around that sort of time, maybe even second edition Warhammer. So I played that. I played a number of other tabletop war games, 50mm historical. What did I do then? So I sort of drifted away as I grew into becoming a proper teenager, discovered girls and all that, and then finally came back to it probably about 12, 13 years ago.
Right.
That's when I first met Stuart, just before he published Rules of Engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been a sort of part-time collaborator with the Great Escape Games guys for on and off for the last sort of decade, really. I've done a couple of expansion books for the Rules of Engagement system with Stuart. So I wrote an article, first of all, for one of the books. I can't remember which one it was, Stu. Maybe you can refresh my memory.
Bagration,
that's the one. So Romanians and Hungarians. So I did a bit of research and helped the guys out with that. Mm-hmm. And then we collaborated on the Operations and Objectives rule set, which was like an expansion pack for Rules of Engagement. So I guess my first love is historicals, but really sort of focusing on the period of Second World War.
Right, okay. As you say, so it's World War II primarily. Do you play much else?
Not a huge amount, if I'm honest. I play a little bit of bolt action every now and then. I'm persuaded to do that. I've played some of the other Great Escape games, so Dead Man's Hand, Clash of Empires. I've got a couple of armies for that. I quite like my Persians. But not a huge amount, if I'm honest. So since getting back into wargaming a few years ago, maybe a decade or so, I haven't spent a huge amount of time wargaming. It's on and off because I get quite a busy home life. My job takes up a lot of time. So I spend maybe not as much time as I'd like on hobby-type things. So I say it's on and off, really, which is why I'm perhaps more of a part-time collaborator rather than getting into wargaming full-time.
Oh, thanks for that. So going back to Warhammer, so that would be just before we get into things like Bloodbath at Orcs Drift and stuff that you were first doing that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm trying about that, yeah.
Vague memories. So it's probably 30 years ago.
Yeah,
ish.
Yeah, I know it is.
Give me age away.
Yeah, I was. So I was sorting through some old copies of White Dwarf the other day, and so he went, oh, "Hang on a minute." Yeah, how old are these?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, I used to subscribe to White Dwarf back then, and my mum had stored them all because I was obviously living at home, being a very young teenager. She stored them all at home until very recently, and then dug them all out. So stuck them on eBay and got quite a good chunk of cash for them because they were like collector's items back then. Yeah,
back when it was a general role playing magazine.
Yeah,
interesting stuff in rather than just being lots of pretty pictures.
I'm quite amused that you seem to be like everybody, and you've had the gap in the middle.
Yeah,
it seems to be everybody. I don't know. Certainly, everybody I've listened to give this spiel, me included. There's the wargaming and role playing until you're about 20 and go to uni, and then you discover something else, and you come back later in life.
And girls, yeah.
It's the same more often than not. It's beer and girls, isn't it?
At least part of it is that moment when you realise that at least on your starting salary, you're never going to be able to afford a decent army.
That's right. That's one of the nice things about actually getting to this sort of age, approaching middle age. You've got a bit of disposable income. So if you want to go and buy an army and spend a bit of time collecting and buying all the right models for it, you can probably afford to do so.
And then facing the Spanish Inquisition when it comes home.
Well, I've got a very understanding wife, actually, so I tend to get away with it. So I let her do the decorating around the house and buy the clothes and the handbags and all that sort of stuff. Be very stereotypical now, but got a good understanding in that respect.
Cool. Right, and in the meantime, Stuart, just a quick catch up with Great Escape before we get into on Cross. As you said, unfortunately, for some reason, I keep missing you at shows, and certainly missed you. Certainly missed you at Salute this year. So you mentioned you released the second supplement for Dead Man's Hand at Salute, which is that's the Ned Kelly supplement, is it?
It is Dead Man's Hand Down Under.
Yeah. Okay. So how's that been going, and what have you currently got out for that?
Well, it's been great. That actually completes the trilogy for Dead Man's Hand. Dead Man's Hand was always going to be 3 books, so that's done now. So all of the releases for Dead Man's Hand Down Under are out. That doesn't mean that Dead Man's Hand is behind us and gone. We've got more coming. We've got another gang coming out soon, which is currently in the sculptor's hands, so it shouldn't be too long for that. And there are a couple of bits and pieces coming out for Dead Man's Hand. There will be more buildings in collaboration with Foreground. So we're still doing more with that, but we've got another game coming out in April, which takes us to another period, to the 1920s in the USA. Cool. And so we'll be doing some different stuff as well. And we've got stuff going on in between, obviously, with Iron Cross, and we've got Sword and Spear that we're working with in that period as well. So it's been a very, very busy year.
Yeah, and of course, you've moved in the same period. You've moved offices, haven't you?
Moved offices. I've moved house. Yeah, done all sorts.
Right. Yeah, because you're now set up at Firestorm, aren't you?
Yeah, Firestorm Games. It's the biggest gaming venue in Europe, as I understand, if not the world. It's a big retail shop, an online shop, which has 80 gaming tables on the premises as well. It's 12,000 square feet. And in the back part of Firestorm Games is their mail order area, model display products, Great Escape Games, and the Dice Bag Lady. So we all share offices back here.
Really must get down to Cardiff.
There's loads of good stuff going on, guys.
Yeah.
Come down to Firestorm.
Yeah, it was on our to-do list to come down to Cardiff at some point back into the summer originally, and just didn't quite happen. But we shall definitely have to get down there before Christmas.
Yeah,
we've actually got the Iron Cross foreground display table from Salute set up right in the entrance of Firestorm Games at the moment. So if you do get down, you'll see this big table. It's about 18 feet by 6, Stu?
16 by 4. 16 by 4.
16 by, okay, sorry. So I was slightly exaggerating, but yeah, it's a good-sized table.
Right.
We would play Iron Cross now back in Salute.
Hang on, so it's a 16 by 4 table. You're playing Salute, so how come I missed it? Because, I knew it was there at Salute. I must have walked around 2 or 3 times, and I completely missed it.
So, some people missed ours, which was even bigger.
So how long is that going to be there for?
Always.
Oh, right, so it's a permanent feature at Firestorm then, is it?
Yeah, until we change it.
Yeah, until we build a bigger and better one.
Right, okay. Well, incentive to go to Firestorm at the moment. Right, okay.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great venue, great people. They're doing all the right things. This is the sort of project and store that should be supported by everybody.
If I needed convincing any more than Mr. Hobbs has tried to convince me to get there already, then... Yeah, no, definitely have to get down before Christmas. And of course, hopefully, all being well, we're going to be having Annie on the show fairly soon as well.
Excellent, yeah, she's looking forward to it. She's got so much great stuff planned, and she's doing some really interesting and diverse things within wargaming, which, again, deserves to be supported.
Yeah, so all being well, we're going to get Annie on the show in the next month or so. So we'll almost have a Firestorm full set. I just need to get down to the shop to interview the guys down there. Right. Anyway, so you're now set up in your new HQ, and here we are with your first game first new game in 2.5 years. So it's back to World War II. So I suppose the first question is, why come back to World War II? I mean, obviously we've got rules of engagement, which we've just ascertained is 10 years old now. So time flies when you're having fun. But why come back to World War II in the first place?
I think
I'm going to let Darryl answer this because it was all his idea.
Yeah, so I've already sort of confessed my love of the period.
Yeah.
I also talked about having, I guess, a disposable income when you get to this time of life. You put those two things together, usually means you have more toys than you can get on the table. Right. So I'd often play various World War II games down at Firestorm, take all my toys along and be slightly frustrated. I couldn't get, 10 tanks out or 10 armoured cars or, a ton of infantry. So I wanted a game that was very simple to play, a simple rule set, quick to play, that enables you to get a really good game. But whilst maintaining sort of a lot of interest through decision making and sort of the tactics and strategy that go into a good game. That's what makes a good game for me. So that's how the game started off.
Okay, so the whole reason it's between... so Iron Cross is pitched between company and battalion level, yeah?
Mm.
Right, okay, and the simple reason is you just want to get all your toys out on the table.
Yeah, pretty much. I think you can play it at any size you want. So we've played it at platoon level, really. So you can get a few squads of infantry, 1 or 2 tanks, and play a quick game on a small table. And maybe we're spoilt slightly. We can really spread out and have massive tables, like 6 by 4 multiplied several times over, all the tables together. Obviously, a lot of people can't do that. So it was designed really to fit onto two 6x4 tables side by side for the optimum type of game, but you can play it on smaller tables and a 6x4, or if you scale down to 15mm. Stuart and I's preference is playing at 28mm, but I know a lot of people got 15mm stuff, so you can get all that onto a 6x4 quite neatly, and again get a lot more toys onto the table.
Yeah, you can get pretty big size games in 15mm on a 6x4.
Yeah.
Which will give you loads of units, loads of tactical opportunities. But actually, one of the best games we've played was one of the most recent, which was on a 6x4 table in 28mm, and we just played lengthways. And we probably had, about 10 units each? And it was a really good battle. It really worked well. So, we've played at that sort of club night level, that 90-minute, 2-hour level. But then we've gone up and we've planned games over the whole day where we've got a couple of players aside. There are maybe 20 tanks on either side, loads of troops, and we've played that over a 4-6 hour period on a really huge scale. And we've gone in between as well. I think our favourite size to play in 28mm 12 by 6.
Yeah,
I think
when we're arranging games.
Lengthways is vastly underrated for 6x4 tables.
Yeah.
I know the Lardies are quite fond of it for their platoon level rules.
Yeah.
And it seems to work really well.
Yeah.
Essentially, we're looking at a rule set that is doable in almost any scale.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why not. We've only played at 15 and 28mm, but once you've got the space or the models, then you can sort of change it and fit it around whatever you've got.
Right. Okay. So how does that? How does that work as far as your ground scale and ranges are concerned? Then, what's the basic kind of ground scale and weapons ranges and that sort of thing, and how do you adjust between the two?
Well, we've got a little bit of a surprise with weapon ranges because there ain't any.
Yeah.
We completely took weapon ranges out of it. Now we do have an adjustable house rule. If we're playing extraordinarily large tables, we say you can't shoot across 2 lengths of table. But essentially, within the game rules, there are no ranges considered.
I like these rules already.
I was going to say, so you didn't this radical thing of going, hang on a second, we're using modern weaponry. The size of the table we're representing, basically, if you can see it, it's in range.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
As you say, I'm liking these all.
I think it also simplifies the game. One of the driving factors behind writing the rule set was to make it as simple as possible for me, because I'm a bit of a dimwit in terms of learning rules, but I wanted to keep it simple so you can get people playing very, very quickly. And when you've got several players per side on a bigger table with lots of units, you don't have to be reverting back to the book and look up lots of charts and tables and thinking, well, is this a 3+ or a 4+? What's the modifier here? You can actually pretty much learn everything in, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of reading. You've learnt the whole rule set. You can get down to playing. That's not to say it's a really, really simplistic game. I think it is simple, but not simplistic. Maybe it's the other way around.
It's elegantly simple.
Yeah, it gives you lots of decision-making points during the game. It's never really clear what you should do. There's always like 3 or 4 options every single opportunity you're going to do something. I think for me, I don't know, blow me own trumpet here and Stuart's for writing this, but I really, really enjoy playing it.
Well, okay, so just to explain to people, so here we have a company to battalion level set of rules, and the entire rule book is 32 pages. Of which the rules take up a third of that?
Yeah.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Right, okay, so that's very small for for that level of a game. Yeah, okay, so...
see, one of the reasons is, as Darryl said, we wanted something that was simple to play and easy to pick up. Yeah. And so, throughout developing the rules, we did entertain lots of other ideas. Okay. But we ended up deciding that fundamentally we wanted games which involved troops and tanks fighting against troops and tanks. Those bloody close quarters battles. Now, we all know that artillery inflicted the most casualties amongst combatants in World War II. Yeah. We know that. But not in bloody close quarters battles. We want those engagements which were 100 meters or less.
The ones you see in the movies.
The ones you see in the movies. So it did mean that we ended up deciding to sacrifice things like artillery and air support. We figured that they added such complications in the rules that it would distract players from the tactics of using your infantry and your armor in combined formations to defeat the enemy, and taking those tactical decisions on the ground as if you're a battalion commander or a company commander.
So when you say you're taking out artillery, so is that all artillery, or do you leave still things in like mortars?
Mortars are still in. Yeah. And mortars are in. It's a bit of trepidation that you leave mortars in, because on that sort of a 6x4 table might represent a 500 meter or a 1,000 meter front. On that sort of size table, your mortars are going to be nowhere near it. So there's a little bit of trepidation about mortars, but we sell mortars, to be honest, and lots of people like having mortar teams. But when it comes to 105mm howitzers, it starts to get a little bit silly, and it starts to get outside the realms of World War II. It starts to become a bit fantastic then. It was an easy decision to take, really.
And obviously, of course, especially given the size and scale of the table you're at, artillery becomes so devastating because even single shells cover such a wide area.
So whilst there is some room within scenarios to represent maybe a pre-engagement bombardment, as far as when you're playing the game, you're not going to involve any aircraft or any calling in artillery. We're concentrating on tanks and troops.
Right. Okay. So, other than the models themselves, and we'll come on to that in a second. What do you need to play? Is it D6 based or what?
D6 and D10. Obviously, you need tape measure, so there is a little bit of measuring for movement. So you need a D6 and a D10 for shooting and for resolving things like company morale checks.
Okay. So
you also need a few tokens.
So tokens-wise, that's just kind of, I'm assuming, just specific tokens for things like whether people are suppressed and that sort of thing?
Well, there are two, for me, within Iron Cross, there are two fundamental, really key mechanisms, and that's how units activate, and its morale as well.
Yeah. And
the tokens are used in that. So you have command tokens and morale markers. And when we come around to talking about specifics of how the game mechanics work, I'll explain how those tokens work.
Right, fine. Okay. Right. Okay, so let's go on to talk about troops. So whether we're playing it in 28mm, 15mm, 6mm, or what have you, we've seen from looking at the FAQ that it's an element-based game as opposed to...
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's no to say, yes, well, you can play it with individual figures, but essentially...
Yeah, we play in 28mm. Our infantry detachments are single-based figures, but yeah, it's an element.
Right, okay. And what does an element represent?
It represents a squad or a section of troops. So within, you'd have about 6-8 elements, and that would represent a company.
Right, okay. So yeah, essentially we're looking at a single element. Sorry, a platoon is represented, say, by 3 elements.
Yeah,
standard platoon.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so tanks, is that kind of 1-to-1 scale?
They're 1-to-1, yeah.
Okay, so right. Given that, okay, I mean, most of us, if you've been playing World War II in any scale, yeah, that's quite easy to put some forces of that together without great difficulty. When it comes down to movement and distances, now we've already discussed the fact that range is basically as far as you can fire. What is the typical movement distance for troops depending on your scale? Just to kind of give people, so people have an idea what sort of ground scale we're talking about.
Yeah, so when we're playing in 28mm, an infantry unit will move a normal rate of 6 inches. Right. Or they can rapid move at 50% extra, so that'll be 9 inches. Right. And there's basically, I think it's 4 classifications of movement. So you get infantry, or sort of foot-mounted. You get light vehicles, medium vehicles, and heavy vehicles.
Right.
So infantry move at 6 inches. The next one up from that, in terms of movement speed, is a heavy vehicle, which will move at 8 inches, which is a 2-inch increment. The next 2-inch increment would be a medium vehicle, which moves at 10, and the next 2-inch increment up would be 12 inches, which would be a light vehicle. So we chose those distances. Again, me being a bit dim-witted and learning rules, it's quite easy to remember those. You don't have to go revert back to lots of different tables to work out, well, this vehicle moves at this speed and this vehicle moves at this speed. You've got these 3 different classes of vehicle and then foot-mounted troops.
Right, okay. And so one assumes for 15 mil you either halve it or use centimetres, yeah?
Well, we actually use the same.
Oh, okay.
We use the same movement distances for 15 mil, and it's no problem. It quickens the game up a bit.
Yeah.
Because you tend to have more units and more elements on the table when you're playing 15 mil, just because you've got more space, and therefore it just keeps the game flowing by moving around the table a little bit faster.
Right. Okay. So you talked about kind of scale of game, almost what you wish it to be from anything from a platoon up to a battalion. But so generally supported company sort of level.
Yeah, I think you play with whatever you've got. So when we've been playtesting, we've played lots of different size games from very small, just like a supported platoon, up to almost battalion level. So a typical game would be, 8, 9 stands of infantry, so units of infantry, which includes a headquarters. And then maybe have 4 or 5 tanks, maybe a scout car or 2, and maybe some transports in there. And that'll be a typical game. So maybe like 15 units on the table would be typical.
Right. Okay. So, right. Sorry. Okay. So, as far as making that up is concerned, do you use a point system, or is the game much more about scenario driven?
Yeah. Well, we've provided a point system, but actually, whenever we've played, almost every time we've played, we've just talked about what we're going to have.
Whatever feels right. So I'm going to take, I've got 1 Tiger, and that's roughly equivalent to 2 of your Shermans. And it's that sort of feel.
I'm sorry, hang on a minute.
There's a Mr. Whitman here wants to talk to you.
Stuart, I think if Darryl's convinced you that a tiger's only worth 2 Shermans,
ask him how often he wins.
Yeah.
Mind you, is that 2 Shermans as long as they're both Fireflies?
Yeah.
That's a slightly different story. Yeah. But whatever feels right. So we tend to have scenarios. We'll agree. We'll lay a table out. Whatever looks cool. Get some good terrain out there. Make it look good, and then agree what the scenario is going to be. And again, we're quite flexible in terms of that. It's like gentleman gaming, I think, isn't it? We're not out to beat the other person overly. Well, there's a bit of competitive spirit, but we're not out to try and win the game per se, other than being sort of playing competitively. So whatever feels right in terms of putting units on the table and having a good time.
Yeah.
But Stuart said there is a point system as well. So the people who want to use points, it gives you a bit more of an idea of what the right balance is in terms of units.
Yeah, and some people like the whole points thing. I like it sometimes. Sometimes I dispense with it. So, it's horses for courses. If you like points, use all the points that we put in it.
I think it's a useful guide, though.
Yeah, it is a very useful guide.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, having talked about around about the forces and stuff. Okay, let's talk about actually getting to the meat and bones of what this game's all about. So as you said, it's you talked about being a simple and fast-paced system. So first off, I suppose let's talk about turn sequence and command and control.
Yeah, this is my favourite bit.
This is, I think, the crux of the whole game.
Yeah.
Really. That's what it all comes down to. Yeah.
Well, it is really. I mean, so many people go, okay, how does combat work? But I mean, actually, the bottom line is, it's okay. How do you order your troops, and
absolutely,
and how does all that fit together? And I suppose as part of that kind of that reflects the whole whole crux of the game, the whole idea of the game, and the whole way that the game is designed revolves around command and control and turn sequence. Please take us through it.
So the key question is, how do I activate my troops? Well, in Iron Cross, you have, at the start of every turn, you have a number of what's called command tokens. This is roughly equivalent to the number of units you've got. So let's say you're the German player with 11 units, I'm the British player with 12 units. We would have that many command tokens each, plus we get a couple extra because our commanders are on the table. Right. So you start the turn. Let's say you start the turn being the player with the initiative. We refer to that as the active player. I'll be the inactive player. We just decide the initiative at the start of the game with a dice roll. Simple as that.
Okay.
In some scenarios, so attacker-defender scenarios, it's fixed who starts first. But let's say you've got the initiative. You are the active player. You've got your handful of 13 command tokens. If you want to activate a unit, you simply spend a command token. So you say, I'm going to move my machine gun team up to this house. You put a command token on them and they move. I'm going to move my Stug, command token. Then you say, I'm going to move my Panzer IV and take a shot at your Sherman. It's a command token.
Right.
That's how active players do their stuff. Now, as the inactive player, I'm not totally passive because...
so it's not I go, you go then?
No, it's not I go, you go. You go. I'm not totally passive because as I'm watching your moves and listening to your commands, at any point I can declare a reaction. So if we go back to the point on your third move where you've moved your Panzer IV up the road and you're going to shoot my Sherman, I might declare, hang on a minute, I'm going to react with my anti-tank gun. And what I'm going to do is try and take out your Panzer IV before it gets into position to fire on my Sherman.
Right, okay. So, interrupting you there just for a second. So, how's that going to be a case of? So, effectively, it's almost like using something like Overwatch.
Well, almost. Yes,
Almost.
Yes, it is. But as you will have ascertained, when you were placing your command tokens on your Germans to move forward, you weren't making any dice rolls. I didn't ask for any dice rolls. However, now that I'm reacting, as the British player, I'm reacting to what you're doing.
Okay.
Because I don't have the initiative, because I'm the inactive player, I have to dice for that reaction to be successful.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so actually in this example...
It's a bit of a gamble.
Yeah. So I've got to spend one of my precious command tokens, which are a limited commodity, and I've got to roll a 3-up in order to succeed in that example to get my shot off.
Right, and does that unit have to be in a position where, for example, it's in line of sight to the unit that's been activated in order to be in order to react to it?
Yes, so it has to be able to react to it. I might have used my Sherman to react to it, but there might have been a circumstance in which I didn't want to. So I chose the anti-tank gun. It was better positioned. So let's assume that my dice roll to react is successful.
Is that means D6 or D10?
That's D6. I need a 3-up on a D6.
Okay.
Let's assume I roll a 4. I'm successful. I get to fire. If I had rolled a 2, say, and I was unsuccessful at reacting, then I would have spent that command token and wasted it. You would then continue with your action, and you'd fire upon my Sherman.
Right.
Then you might say, I'm going to reactivate my Panzer IV and fire at your Sherman again, because I didn't kill it the first time.
Oh, okay, so you...
Yeah?
So it's possible to activate a unit more than once?
It is possible to activate a unit multiple times. It's just that it's within a turn. It's just that you have to dice after the first time. So as the active player, your first activation is automatically successful, but subsequent activations require dice rolls, and they get harder and harder the more you try to reactivate. Right. So you can be quite flexible and do quite a lot, but you've got to remember that your opponent can always react. So there's always that danger. And we find that with new players, what they tend to do is they tend to push units forward and use lots of activations, bam, 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 fire at everything. And then they're low on tokens, on command tokens. The other guy's got an armful of command tokens, and he's able to bring multiple forces to bear on those units that you've pushed forward in order to try and engage and destroy the enemy early. So the clever player will not activate a unit too many times and will always support. And the game really encourages and rewards support and using the right units at the right time and using your tokens wisely.
So if I'm the active player, when does my turn end, and how do I refresh tokens?
There's two ways.
That's a great question.
Yeah, two ways that can happen. So the active player, as Stuart said, the clever player will get some sort of a couple of moves going together, but they might decide to actually give up the initiative and hand the initiative over to the inactive player, who then becomes the active player, whilst retaining a number of tokens, command tokens, for use later in that particular turn. Or the other way of actually getting the initiative is actually steal the initiative. So in the example we were talking where Stuart was going to use his anti-tank gun to shoot the Panzer IV, and he rolled the D6 to try and interrupt and have that reactive turn. If he'd rolled a 6 on that D6, he would have stolen the initiative. So there's two ways of the initiative going back and forth.
The turn ends when all the tokens are spent.
Right. So, this may sound like a really stupid question. Why would you ever want to give up the initiative?
That's a perfectly reasonable question, and it's a sensible one. You'd want to give up the initiative at some point because as you're the active player and you're spending tokens like water, the other player is going to be able to spend his tokens that turn. So you don't want to be in a position where he's got 8, 9 tokens to spend and you can do nothing because you've spent all of yours. You want to be able to react. Once we talk about morale, that will become even more clear to you.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But I'm guessing from that it's perfectly possible for the initiative to pass multiple times during a turn.
Oh, it will do, yeah.
It's
I'm also when the whole turn is over, does the same player get initiative again to start the next one?
No, you dice for it.
You dice for it, right?
When you activate a unit, I'm assuming at that point that unit can has a choice of doing multiple different types of actions.
Yeah, it can move and shoot. It can fall back.
Right. Okay. We'll come on to. So, I mean, you hinted about morale. We'll come on to that in a second. Okay. So, obviously, we're in a situation where initiative is potentially quite fluid. And you constantly have this decision of, do you react to the opposition or do you wait for them to finish their activations? So
yeah, because the issue is that the active player is activating his units without a dice roll.
Yes.
Yeah, if you as the reactive player need to roll a 3 up. So you're actually, if you just do basic maths, you can figure out that if you're always reacting, you're going to waste a third of your tokens.
Yes. Yes, or over half if you're me, because I'm just rubbing dice.
I'm also assuming that one of the nice side effects of this system is if you want to represent troops as well led or badly led, you can give them fewer or more dice.
Absolutely, yes, you can do that as well. And further on down the line, I mean, we're presenting Iron Cross as elegantly simple as I've said before. So. The suggested army lists we've got on represent trained, competent troops, but later on as we introduce other lists, we'll have some less than competent and elite troops as well, and that is exactly the thing that will be reflected.
So British Paras, for example, will wind up with a fistful more dice?
Yeah.
Don't talk to me about British Paras.
Why not, Neil?
You just had to go there, didn't you? Yeah, so yes. As listeners know, my regular gaming opponent has British Paras, and they're hard as nails.
Hardcore, yeah.
He's going to love these rules, isn't he?
It sounds like it. Yes. Okay, so that's activation. So obviously, one would assume that moving and firing means that you're less effective at firing.
Especially vehicles. It's key, and that's what makes this activation system doubly interesting. Because if you move with a tank, you're going to get penalties to hit. But what you actually can do is you can say, okay, I'm going to move into position with my tank. Now I'm going to reactivate the tank, and I'm going to fire. You count as stationary. So it's the mode you're in when you're spending the command token. So it does encourage it, and it allows you to get vehicles into position and to get troops into better positions where you can pour fire more effectively on things.
Yeah, so I was going to say, what is the difference between move and fire and then move and fire? But obviously, the issue is you're burning 2 command tokens.
Spending more tokens, yeah. And got that gamble, you might actually get the reactivation. On your first reactivation, it's fairly simple to do it. It's a 2-up.
Right.
And your second reactivation, you need a 3-up. And your third reactivation, you need a 4-up. So it increases by 1 each time. So the more times you reactivate, the harder it gets.
And you've also got this other gamble of it's a combined arms, and you've only got with only a certain number of command tokens on your turn. You've got to make sure that you're not spending them all on one unit, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
You can effectively. It really replicates how a unit might overstretch, or units might overstretch themselves and get exhausted quite quickly.
Okay, so that kind of covers command and control, as you say. Fairly fluid. I imagine in that case then the whole turn potentially flows pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, and it flows back and forth. You do get those hesitations over, do I react now? Do I react now, or do I save it? Do I risk it? It's only a Panzer IV.
Right. Yeah. You're constantly making decisions about, should I spend this token, whether the active player or not. If you're the inactive player reacting, you're then sort of reevaluating every turn or every activation your opponent's making, whether you should interrupt and do something. It's a gamble whether you're going to waste that token or not.
And those decisions are made even more difficult when we throw morale into the equation.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about morale now then, because you're obviously really keen to talk about morale. So let's talk about morale at this point in time. Okay, so how are those decisions affected by morale?
Okay, morale. When you suffer a hit, you suffer a morale marker.
Right.
There is a mechanism against infantry where you get to make a dice roll to upgrade that 1 morale marker to 2 morale markers.
Okay.
Against armor, when armor's hit, it takes a morale marker. If you do a penetrating roll, you can inflict more morale markers or even destroy the vehicle.
Right.
The morale markers hamper your activities. So for every morale marker you've got on you, it's 1 harder to reactivate.
Right.
So remember in one example where we had the Panzer IV activating for the second time and it needed a 2-up. If it had 2 morale markers on it at the time, it'd get -2 to that, so it'd need a 4-up.
Right.
So you need to roll a number equivalent to the number of morale markers and command tokens on. That sounds a little convoluted, but it's real simple when you've got the markers in front of you.
Right.
I've got two command tokens on it. I've got 2 morale markers. I need a 4-up to reactivate.
So, for example, in our example, if the Panzer IV moved to engage the Sherman, but the anti-tank activation
was successful. And let's say it inflicted a morale marker on that Panzer IV. Well, that Panzer IV it already had reactivated, so it already made its roll. But now it would also get an additional -1 on its shooting, because you get -1 to hit for every morale marker you've got.
Oh, right, okay.
So you get -10%.
So they're like a double whammy. Yes, they're like a double whammy.
It's a double whammy. So it's got that suppression factor as well, because you get firing's all on a D10. So each morale marker will reduce your firing by 10%.
Right. Okay. So does that mean that if a unit has morale markers against it, does that mean that it loses its automatic activation?
No. You always get your first activation as the active player for free.
Right. And one assumes that you can perform some sort of rally action to remove these markers.
Well,
right,
yeah.
Take a company morale check. So at any point, you can spend one of your tokens as the active player and conduct a company morale check. You roll a d6 and either pass or fail, and then take a morale token, a morale marker off the unit or any unit of your choice. As the reactive player, if you're getting shot at, so let's say you've got a stand of infantry that's got 4 markers on it already, and Stuart's now declared he's going to shoot my unit with his machine gun, his heavy machine gun. So he could potentially do a lot of damage here and actually wipe that unit off the table. So I'm going to declare an interrupt first of all. So I'm going to interrupt and react on a 3-up. I'm then going to take a company morale check and see if I can take off some of those morale markers to recover the morale of that unit, hoping they'll last long enough whilst he's shooting at them.
This sounds like an ideal opportunity to come into how combat works. Right, so you've already hinted that combat works on a D10 system.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does the whole combat system work?
It's real easy. It's basically a 5 to hit for everything. There are modifiers. We don't need to go through the type of modifiers because we're wargamers and we're all familiar with the type of modifiers. They won't be a particular surprise to anybody. So if you score a hit, you inflict a morale marker. Then you roll a d6. If you get a 4 up, you inflict a second. So it's as though you've taken a few casualties. Now, it's important to note that there's no casualty removal in Iron Cross.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so a stand of infantry you don't remove one every time you take a marker. Instead, it's got a morale rating. And a standard infantry detachment will have a morale rating of 5.
Right.
If the number of morale markers exceed the morale rating of the unit, it's destroyed.
Right.
That's whether it's a stand of infantry or a tank. So a tank you can destroy by shooting it with a tiger and penetrating its armor and blowing it outright. Yeah. Or you can inflict those little hits and inflict morale marker upon morale marker upon morale marker until the crew decide that the tanks had it. Give up the ghost.
Right. Okay. So effectively, a stand of infantry on its 6th hit, it's destroyed.
Yes.
Yes, and as you're saying, other than the automatic activation, every single morale marker gives a -1.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see it starts to make immediate sense why you would have, like say, a morale rating of 5, for example, because obviously it then means that after your first activation, you need to be rolling 6s.
Yes.
And I suppose it's the same with the hit, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but you can see when you're going through a turn. We could be partway through a turn, and again, let's go back to your Panzer IV, which now has a morale marker on it. And let's say it's got an activation and a morale marker. You might think, I want to reactivate that Panzer IV, but it's a 3 up. I don't want to risk that as the active player. What I'll do is I'll take a company morale test first.
Right.
Yeah, I passed. I removed that morale marker. Now I'm going to reactivate it. And it's a 2 up. So there's always these decisions. Darryl's mentioned the decisions about whether you should react or save it until you're the active player. You've also got to consider, well, am I going to activate a unit now? Do I need to bring these reserves up, or do I really need to manage the morale of these frontline troops?
Right. And obviously, everything takes a command token in order to
yes.
in order to empower it. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
And can you take multiple morale checks in a turn?
Yes.
That frequently happens as well. It's infuriating. You've got this fantastic plan all set up, and you take a pounding on the right flank. So you then think, okay, I've got to take a morale test. You fail the first one. Okay.
No,
I'll spend another token.
It can get worse. It can get worse than that, because what you can do is you can have a really brilliant plan, execute it magnificently, pour a load of morale markers on a unit, and then, which we haven't mentioned yet, Darryl could take a company morale test and roll a 6. Because if you roll a 6 on a company morale test, you get to take all of the morale markers off one unit.
And does that also mean that you then see an initiative as well?
No, because what you do is you say, okay, I'm going to react with a morale test, and you roll your 3 up. If you got a 6, you'd seize the initiative.
Oh, okay.
And then you take your morale
move
test.
Is a 6, yeah.
Yeah, so on any morale test, if you get a 6, you get to remove all of the tokens from one unit. Where normally, on a 3 up, you get to remove 1 marker from a unit.
Right. Now, so is it just on a 6? It's either 1 marker, or if you roll a 6, it's everything?
It's either 1 marker or all on 1 unit.
Right. Yes, I can see how that could immediately get quite annoying.
Yeah, but then see that again. That puts as an active player, that puts loads of decision making in your head, because if you've spent a lot of tokens building an attack and pouring lots of fire on the enemy and inflicting lots of morale markers, you're thinking, I've spent a lot of command tokens. He's spent nearly none. I've damaged all these units. Do I take the gamble now? Put everything in, throw everything forward in an effort to eliminate some of his frontline troops, really cause him some terrible damage, or do I hold back again because I know there's going to be a counterattack? So many decisions to make all the time.
I'm liking this.
Yeah, it's a bit, rather than, and again, rather than just being at the vagaries of a dice roll, or what have you, it is very much a case of you're constantly having to make that decision of, okay, do I keep pushing my attack and then be in a situation where I know that my enemy is going to come back at me, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
I also get the feeling that this plays pretty fast.
Oh, yeah.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, most of the downtime is in those decision-making seconds where you're thinking, oh, God, I've only got 4 tokens left, but I really need a morale test.
So what happens at the end of the turn?
Well, at the end of the turn, we check victory conditions. If there are no victory conditions met, we go on to the next turn. We get all of our tokens back. So, again, you'd recount your units, so you get 1 per unit plus a couple for your command. And then you dice for initiative again.
Right. So obviously, as you lose units, you start your command starts to degrade.
That's right.
It does. Although there are some special scenario rules. So if you're playing attacker defender scenarios, there are bonuses for the defender because, of course, he's going to be vastly outnumbered.
So at the end of another point, actually, to bring up, at the end of the turn, you take all those command tokens off that you spent. You put them back in your pot. Each player has their own pot to start the turn when you've counted up. But you leave the morale markers for the next turn. So this is how you then start building up a bit of momentum in a game. So if you cause a lot of damage to your opponent at the end of one turn, it's vital you then try and get the initiative at the start of next turn. So it really becomes important. So you can then continue that attack before he has a chance to start spending some command tokens to take company morale checks, and then sort of get those tokens, those markers back off the damaged units.
Right. And in that case, I do need to ask one question because it's something that has come up as been highlighted as differences between certain rules. When it comes to close quarter battle, which I'm assuming can potentially happen at some point, as in hand to hand, do those suppression markers stay in place?
I'm going to surprise you here. There's no hand to hand.
Really?
No hand to hand.
How does that work then?
We had long discussions about this, and it's a pure mechanism thing. When you get to close range, which is 6 inches in Iron Cross, there are bonuses on firing. So that once you get to that range, you're going to start to inflict morale markers real fast, and people and units are going to get damaged and degraded real fast. You don't actually need a close quarters. Now you can actually argue if you want to add a narrative. You can say, oh yeah, these guys have obviously posted grenades through the windows and gone in with the bayonet. But we don't have a separate mechanism. We only have a mechanism for combat, whether that's firing from a long range or a very close range. It's just the violence is increased quite a lot at close range.
I mean, there are other rule sets. Other rule sets are available where close combat starts at X inches away, and you actually change the rules at that point. But effectively what they're saying is at this point, you're starting to add in grenades and other things. And I think this sounds like what you're doing here, except you're not really changing the rules.
Absolutely. See, one of the objectives, Darryl said at the start, one of the real objectives was to have this as a 10-page rule set where the guts of the rules that you needed to play are 10 pages. And we were really strict about that. And I think adding in that close quarters combat starts to add a couple of pages or 4 pages to it. And it was just going to be too much. And actually, it's not needed. It's not needed at this level.
No, just stunned silence. I was kind of thinking, oh, right, hang on a minute. But yeah, certainly I can see where you're coming from. And
but having played the game, or playtesting the game for the last, almost 2 years, I think, it's put a lot of time into this. I haven't really missed that close quarters phase. Because as Stuart said, you still have the narrative, so my guys move up to your guys, get quite close and do more damage by being closer. It's still just a combat phase, so that rule mechanic is just the same one you've been playing with the rest of the game.
Right. Now, okay, so we've talked a bit about the fact that you tell us, okay, so there are no weapons ranges. Mm-hmm. So you're assuming that everything is basically within range. Now, I'm just thinking there are, for the majority of things, whether that's like machine guns or rifles, you can cope with that. When it comes down to things like submachine guns, which were a little bit more limited in their range and effectiveness, do you basically turn around and go, okay, well, we're basically abstracting it into the fact that the unit fires with anything within range?
Exactly that, yeah. So a unit of infantry has some weapons, and we don't get hung up on what those weapons are. There's only one exclusion to that, which is man-portable anti-tank weapons, so a Panzerfaust or a bazooka. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stu, it's a 6-inch range, or is it 12-inch? I can't remember.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. I told you about me and learning rules, fellas. It's a great example, but it's quite close, and that's the only exception is a man-portable anti-tank weapon. Everything else, we just assume that the unit's got whatever they need to do the job, whether it be light machine gun, whether it's rifles, some submachine guns, whatever.
Yeah, they're 12-inch range for all the man-portable anti-tank weapons.
Thank you.
Okay, but as far as the other units' weapons are concerned, you're not getting hung up on whether they're firing rifles, whether they've got MG42s, or if they've got multiple MG42s. It's just, okay, this unit has this amount of firepower.
Correct,
and depending on the type of unit, does its firepower change?
Yeah, well, it can. So machine guns are very effective over long ranges, much more effective than an infantry detachment. So right. your archetypal machine gun in the bell tower is horribly effective and can put a lot of suppressive fire down, because it can put that amount of fire down at range, which other units cannot do. Right. And that's particular to a heavy machine gun.
So what's the difference of that? Is that simply a case of when it hits it inflicts more morale markers?
Correct.
It's intuitive already.
Yeah.
I get the hang of it.
Making a worrying amount of sense, I have to say. Because I guess when it boils down to it, it's an abstraction of an infantry squad. Ergo, it's got a bloke with a submachine gun, two guys with some form of support machine gun, and a bunch of guys with rifles and grenades.
Exactly.
In a nutshell, you've got it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Unless you're going something. I mean, I'm sure you might do something different in terms of firepower for something like a bunch of paras who've all got stems or something.
We're working on some stuff. So in the future, when we do lots more army lists for particular formations, then yes, of course. But as I said in the book, we present 4 army lists. It's late war, the major 4 belligerents, and it's just their normal standard infantry.
Oh right, okay. So we're looking at U.S. infantry, German infantry, British infantry, and Russians. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
So how do you differentiate between the 4 armies?
Well, of course, the equipment's different, and tanks perform differently and have different statistics. And each force does have a couple of interesting little additional flavourful rules. Nothing major. There's not a whole raft of rules. So there's one element of the game in movement where you can actually platoon move. I think it's called a detachment move, where you can move 3 units as long as they're making one move and all go in the same direction. You can make a 3-unit move and spend 2 tokens.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. Normally you can only do that with 3 units of the same type. So you can move 3 tanks or 3 infantry. You can't mix and match. Germans, they can mix and match. They're a bit more flexible. So that's so it's little touches.
Oh, right. So the German one reflects the battle group, camp group structure.
Sure,
exactly. Yeah.
Using. Oh, okay.
It's even called that in the rule book. The camp ripper move
actually works quite interestingly, because if you think about it, if you're going to advance a British platoon up from the rear, you probably want to use 2 dice and just get them the heck up there.
Yeah.
But if you're going to start doing the classic 2 up, 1 back thing, then you're going to start to need more precise control and more dice to do it.
Yes. Exactly.
Like that.
Okay. I have a question with regard to forces. Now, you've already mentioned when looking at scenarios that that especially if you play attack and defence, one force will have a big advantage in numbers to the other. Yeah, the attacker.
Yeah, it's a bit of an imbalance. So the attacker always has slightly more. Yeah.
Okay. Now, as somebody who, as most people who listen to the show will know, I'm not a huge fan of point systems. especially where they enable you, and perhaps this is the leading question, especially when they enable you to effectively mix and match and take what you want. How do the Orbats work in Iron Cross? Is it a case of you can pick and choose exactly what you wish, or do you have to kind of stay somewhere within an historical order of battle?
It's entirely up to the players who are playing the game. So we don't publish any Orbats at all that says you must take this, you must take 1 command, 2 infantry and 1 tank.
Oh, okay.
There's none of that. You can take whatever you want. So I would hope that people do a bit of research. This is what I really enjoy about World War II gaming, and there's a plethora of stuff out there to read up on, whether it's internet or books or whatever. So you can read up on unit compositions and actually field something which feels like a real unit or a real army. And the game sort of punishes players who try and sort of stuff their army full of, I don't know, if you just take 5 Tiger tanks, priced at, I don't know, 110 points each, whatever the number is. That's the equivalent of, say, I don't know, 10 Shermans, but your opposition player probably won't take 10 Shermans. He might take, I don't know, 3 or 4 Fireflies, a couple of Cromwells, and some infantry. I can guarantee the player who's got that balanced force, that combined arms, will have a better game and a much better chance of winning than the player who's just taken a load of Tigers.
We actually biased some of the scenarios when we played, where we purposely said, okay, I'll take an all-tank force to see how this works.
Yeah.
And as long as you play in World War II for the reasons that we like to play historical periods, then it'll work out that those armoured forces won't succeed. You know when you play in World War II, you actually have to put some terrain on the table. World War II battles weren't fought in open fields, ever, because it doesn't work, because all your guys get killed. So all your World War II battlefields need to be packed full of terrain. You need hedgerows, you need towns and villages, you need woods and things to hide.
Hills, bridges, rivers, all that, yeah.
If you're doing that and you're taking a bunch of Tigers, you're dead. You're dead. The rules actually crucify you, because all the infantry has to do is just get up near you, and they don't even have to hurt your tanks. They just have to fire their anti-tank weapons at it and hit it a few times. And eventually the guy in the Tiger will say, that's it, I've had enough of this, there's smoke coming in.
Right.
Come back to answer your question then. So there's no Orbats at all which are published. It's up to the player what they take. And as we're sort of trying to get across, it's all about taking a balanced force. So taking some infantry, taking some transport, which we haven't talked about actually. It's really important to have some transport on the table.
Oh, okay.
So whether that's trucks or half-tracks or even motorbikes or bicycles, mobility for your infantry is really quite important. Or mobility full stop for all of your vehicles, getting around the table. So even whilst you might make a 12-inch move with a light vehicle, you're still going to take a couple of turns, therefore a couple of activation tokens to actually traverse from one side of the table to the other, or even the 6x4 table. So having some transports for your infantry, otherwise it's a bloody long way for them to slog 6 inches at a time, or 9 if it's a rapid move, but then they can't shoot on a rapid move. So that foot slogging at 6 inches at a time takes a long time to get around the table. So that's where the transports become important. So therefore, having some of that in your force becomes quite important too. Having a mixture of different types of tanks, maybe some light tanks who move a bit faster, but maybe a bit more vulnerable, not quite as powerful guns as some of the medium and heavy tanks, who then have some disadvantages. So a heavy tank can't move around quite as quickly, but it will soak up a lot more punishment. So taking a single Tiger in a German force with a couple of Panzer IVs, maybe a Stug or two, is quite a good balance, because you push that Tiger up, it's a bit of a bullet magnet. The opposition player tends to then focus his energy, her energy, on putting rounds into that Tiger, which allows you as that German player to manoeuvre some of your other troops into better positions.
Yeah. It's
the same with different forces. So, yes, certain types of unit, whether that be a heavy tank or, I don't know, some motorcycle-based infantry, so the opposite ends of the scale there, give you a much better gaming experience, and I think also perhaps more reflective of how a battle will be fought at that size.
There is the odd restriction. I should mention that there are rare units, and you can only ever have one of them, so you can never have a bunch of Sherman crocodiles on the table. That would be silly. Not that they're any good anyway. So there is the odd rare unit that's restricted.
But so one assumes when it comes down to things like embarking and disembarking from vehicles, it's not particularly granular. But again, it's like it's yes, sort of a command token, that sort of thing.
It's part of movement,
Yeah, simple mechanism.
Right. Okay. So, and is there any form of? I know, like for example, in Battle Group, there's a part of the thinking behind that is thinking about this whole thing. I suppose a certain amount of resource management with looking at ammunition resupply and that sort of thing. I'm assuming because of the level of game we're talking about here, that sort of thing isn't involved.
None.
Correct, yeah. That's one of the things that was sort of cut out. We talked about it in the early days, but it was one of those sort of complications that fell by the wayside quite early on because it's just, I think, complicating the simple game mechanics.
Right. Okay. So as far as support vehicles are concerned, so we're really looking around at, other than tanks, looking around at troop transports, being able to move around the board, move to objectives quickly. And,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then go away. Again, we just wanted to cut out all the complications. And that sort of thing is, see, we've got these suggested scenarios in the book, but we openly say within the book that your scenarios are going to be better than the ones presented here, because we expect this to be the kind of rule set that's found by those players that are interested in World War II, want to do something different, are probably the type of people who are mature enough to have their own scenarios, whether they just make them up or they research them. And if you want to put in things like the German heavy tanks have limited fuel, it's very easy within the rules mechanisms to just add a little special rule for your scenario saying that, well, if you roll a 1 for reactivation, you're out of fuel. Tough. That sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered the rules, which is a third of the book.
Yep.
What else is there?
In the book, there are scenarios and a scenario section, which takes up about 6 pages. There are army lists, which takes up about 5 pages. And there's a run-through of a turn, which goes over 4 pages. That's about it.
Okay. So, other than activation, combat, morale, is there anything else within the game turn? Is there anything we missed?
I'm racking my brain. I'm going to say no. I can't think of anything else. Say it's fairly straightforward as a rule set. There's not a lot to it, but we said it a number of times during the conversation. It's all about decision making. Yeah. And it sounds, unless you've maybe seen it played or played it yourself, it's sometimes quite difficult to get your head around that. I don't. You only do like 3 or 4 things. But
I was going to say it sounds almost deceptively simple.
Yeah,
yeah, it is deceptively simple. It's really easy to pick up. Do you know what? This is a revelation that's come through with Dead Man's Hand. When we developed Dead Man's Hand, the beauty of Dead Man's Hand is that it's ridiculously simple to pick up, but it's those little nuances in the rules. And Dead Man's Hand's a little more random because of the dice used and the cards, but within Iron Cross, it's these nuances of when to spend those tokens and taking those decisions and making the right reactions and reserving the right amount of command tokens, passing over the initiative at the right time. All of these decisions that constantly dog you, they're just decisions to make for a game player to make. There's nothing special about the rules which govern those decisions because it's your reaction as a player. Yeah. And we've taken out all of the little complications like close combat. It's gone. Artillery gone. Morale, apart from how I've said morale works, there are no morale tests. You decide as the player. You can see that section up front has taken a lot of hits. It's under a lot of pressure. Are you going to pour some company morale tokens into it? Maybe you're going to make a fallback move, take them out of the front line. It's all about decision making. And that's what Iron Cross is all about. It's elegantly simple.
It's got the same property, by the sound of it, and please don't take this as an insult because it's meant as a compliment, as something like Dreadball, where very quickly you get to, the rules fall away and you get to play the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
A very, very good analogy.
So how do you win?
They're a victory.
It's a battle. How do you win?
Well,
come on, Neil.
So, okay, so you've obviously got scenario conditions. Mm-hmm. However, especially consider, are there fixed victory conditions for, say, an encounter battle? So is it a case of, once you've lost X number of units, at that point, your army ceases to be effective, or how does that quite work?
Yeah, in some of the in some of the scenarios that happens. So it might be each force has a breakpoint, which is very easy to work out.
That's what I was kind of getting at, really.
Yeah, and if you reach that breakpoint, it's over. To be honest, I think you'll verify this experience as well. I think all of us will. Generally, when you're playing a game, at some point you say, "Yeah, you've won."
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Actually, you know that within Iron Cross, if you've got half your tokens left, it gets quite difficult to start putting an attack together, because you're pretty much on the defensive, just spending company morale tokens by that point. So you've got to a point where your force is broken and you sort of throw in the towel.
And I would contend that, in fact, it's a slightly flawed set of rules if it's not possible to tell that by looking at the state of your force.
Yeah, you just got to look across the level and go, I'm not coming back from here.
Yeah, so there is...
It doesn't strike me as the kind of buying where you'd be going, well, I must have won because my one surviving Panzer IV is sitting on the one objective.
There's no
How many Germans?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a little mechanism in there with breakpoints where at the end of a turn, if you've reached a certain amount of breakpoints, you roll a d6, and if that meets a certain number, then it's over. But yeah, you hardly ever need it.
There are some rule sets that shall remain nameless, which do tend to kind of be drag things out and come up with some interesting results.
Yeah,
shall we say?
roll your tanks onto the objective at the end of the last turn, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, that's it. That's a game, though, isn't it? we're much more serious.
Chess with tank models.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we've got army lists, scenarios. Okay. So how many scenarios are included in the game?
There are 4.
Right.
And 2 of them are normal battles, if you like, and 2 of them are attacker-defender scenarios, which are always the best to play, in my view.
Okay, so when you say normal battle, is that by that you mean kind of an encounter battle sort of thing?
Escalating engagements, bringing your forces on piecemeal, or just like almost a mad rush. You bring all your forces on and duke it out in the middle of the table.
Right. Okay. So they're the actually, for want of a better phrase, but you've already used it, the kind of more gamery scenarios. Correct. As opposed to attacker and defender, which is probably more what you'd expect in a World War II sort of scenario.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And attacker-defender ones are always the best because they present yet more tactical opportunities, especially as one side's heavily outnumbered. And this rule set, Darryl and I think our favourite way to play is attacker-defender.
Some of the best games we've had have been that.
Yeah, it really replicates how you might have a 3-line defense, and then you've got to make the right decisions about when to pull that first line back, and when to hold those reserves ready for a counter attack. Where that
also makes it much more obvious what your objective is.
Yes.
Yeah, but yes, that sounds like a very knowing laugh, Devil.
Yeah, I fondly remember one game I did particularly well. Actually, it doesn't happen very often. So holding a couple of companies of Shermans back and Fireflies and Cromwells and all that, with just 2 sort of well-placed and Pack 40 anti-tank guns. Sighted those, and with the reactivation roll, that's all I needed to get out. So I maybe had 20 tokens in my hand at the start of the turn. I kept on reactivating these 2 guns, not having to activate anything else I've got back in reserve. So holding up the attacker on all these, 10 and 12 tanks or so with just 2 anti-tank guns. So you can do that sort of thing, but as soon as you lose one of those, that position becomes really sort of untenable, and the tanks then roll forward, and it becomes much more of a, what am I going to do now? Crikey. What am I going to bring up in reserve? Because you've spent a load of tokens holding them back to that point. So, yeah. Very enjoyable.
It does sound also like you can do the whole Michael Whitman thing.
Oh,
If you just have that tiger forward and feed it all your activation dice.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, you can have a little special rule for him where he can reactivate a bit more easily, and he can roll down that streak, can he?
Okay, but I think, from what I can see, that's about it as far as the rules are concerned. That basically covers everything, yeah?
Yeah. I think so, yeah. There's not a huge number of rules to talk about, really. I think we've covered off pretty much everything.
There's only so much you can put in 10 pages.
That's right. Yeah.
As I say, it all sounds remarkably simple.
Yeah, it's a different take on this sort of gaming, I think, because we've had a lot of rule sets that have been quite intricate and quite meaty and have a lot of bulk to them. But really, what we wanted to get back to was we just wanted to get back to how infantry and tanks fight against infantry and tanks in classic close-up bloody World War II encounters.
Yeah, because I mean, there's an awful lot of World War II rules out there which are very micromanaged, aren't they?
Yeah, they're micromanaged, and some of them actually are good games and fun, but they're not very World War II. And my test for a World War II game, especially, for any historical period game, is if when I'm playing it, it looks like a World War II game and it feels like a World War II game.
It probably is a World War II game.
Yeah, it's a good World War II game. And Iron Cross definitely does that. It does that a lot better than many other games. There are other games that do it really well as well. A couple of other systems I've played, Chain of Command, I think does it really well on that certain level. But Iron Cross will add that level of elegant simplicity into your games where you don't have to learn a whole load of rules. You can actually get, if you want, a load of people involved and a load of units involved and loads of tanks involved, if you want. Or you can play it on the normal sort of club night level on a 6x4.
And that adds a different dynamic, actually, having teams of players. So what we do, we tend to appoint a commander. Yeah. And then there's different ways of then allocating tokens. So you say, okay, each player is going to have 6 tokens to spend as they wish, out of maybe 18 tokens total. Or the commander says, okay, this player on the left flank can have a token now. You've got the other players on his team sort of begging for tokens to do something. So it gets this bit of almost like a real-life dynamic. You've got the main commander and you've got your sub-commanders asking for orders or suggesting what they should do to press the attack home.
Yeah, but it's like, yes, I have the ideal opportunity, but I need 5 command tokens.
That's right.
To do it.
Yeah, sorry, I need to spend those over here.
So
you have to, you have to wait.
This is actually one of the things we've been discussing at the club is a World War II narrative campaign where there's a lot of basically map movement and discussion. And the intent was to allow people to fight whatever actions cropped up as a result with whatever rule set fit the actions. And we've been looking for something for what happens when 2 forces of larger than company size hit each other and we can't use I ain't been shot by the Plastic Soldier Company rules or Chain of Command or something like that. And I think you may just have solved my problem.
Yeah, Mike, that's really common within wargaming because there are times when we've wanted to take whatever period we're playing and we've just wanted to scale up. We've wanted to go to a bigger level. Absolutely. So we've been playing a game which is normally for 2 tanks and 20 infantry and we want to scale up and make a bigger game out of it. And the rules break down. They break down because they're not designed for those bigger forces or those bigger table sizes or multiple players.
You've been reading at least one rant on my blog.
Yes. So in a way, we actually reverse engineered Iron Cross, and we started with a basis of saying this has to work at a really big level with lots of players. This has to work for us to indulge our own desires to play on 24 by 8 foot tables.
I mean, the point is that I could play, if what the campaign throws up is a platoon level action, I can throw Chain of Command at that and reasonably guarantee I'll get it done in the club evening. Yeah. If what it throws up is a battalion hitting 2 companies, I'm screwed.
Yeah, this will do it in an evening.
Exactly.
Yeah, but as you say, there are few games that end up in that situation where you turn around and say, okay, it'll work just as well over a 6x4 table as it will over that.
Yes.
20 by that 14 by 6 or 20 by 8 table.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that on a table that size with multiple players, you can sort of divide the table up a bit and have people working simultaneously until they get in each other's way.
Yeah, absolutely, and that adds to it because eventually people are going to run out of tokens, and then you're going to be screaming for the other players to finish. But yeah, it works really quickly. It actually probably goes almost as quickly as a one-on-one small table game, because it divides into 3, and there's a little bit of crossover. But yeah, the tokens get slung fast and furiously.
Now, you mentioned it took you a couple of years to develop this. Was half that time actually throwing rules away?
No.
Well, yeah, certainly an element of that. I think the majority of time in the last couple of years was playtesting. So the kernel of the rules, to the nub of it, came together really quickly.
Yeah.
It was just trying different things out, and making sure that it really worked for the different types of scenarios, as in sort of gaming scenarios rather than actually the scenarios you play on the table, but that it would work at those different levels. Throwing rules away was a big part of it. Had tons and tons of ideas. And kept coming back to this thing that it had to be simple, it had to be a really short set of rules, so lots of stuff got junked.
Yeah, as I say, I kind of got that impression from what Stuart was saying, that this whole thing of the rules fitting into a very say 10 pages or what have you was actually one of your major design philosophies. That it's got to be around this size, because actually, if it gets bigger, it's indicative of it getting more complicated than what we actually require.
Yeah, exactly that. And we had loads of conversations and arguments. Myself and Darryl. Mark Mannering is also another guy who was instrumental in developing the rules, and it was always us 3 making suggestions and then arguing for things to be pulled out. And going through. I don't know how many versions. Is this version 18.4 or something?
Something like that. And playing the same game like 3 or 4 times in a row. So we'd go down Firestorm for a weekend and play the same game, but just tweak a rule here or there, or change sides with the same forces, change sides, and to see what impact that had on the sort of playability of each rule.
Yeah. And there were times throughout the development where there were 1 or 2 occasions where we came up with major rule changes, really major things that made a huge impact on how the game played, and actually made a huge positive impact. So at one point we decided, and it's a long time ago now, but we decided that no, we're not going to have casualty removal. There's going to be no casualty removal whatsoever, and it was the smartest thing I think we ever did within this rule set. It's the best move we ever took. Maybe apart from the token activation. We changed that really early on as well. That was one of the first things we changed. One of the first fundamental things. We had a slightly different system of the command tokens that worked slightly differently, and fundamentally changed that. And it just made the game so much more involved, so much more tense.
Tense. I was going to say that word. Yeah, tense.
Yeah, it's really tense, but it always felt that it was in your control. So what you've always been able to do with Ironcross since that rule change is you've always been able to plan something and actually develop an attack or a defense indeed. And yeah, sometimes things happen and somebody makes a reaction roll or a lucky morale check. But you can always count on your ability, if you imagine yourself as a company commander, on your ability to think forward and think, yes, I'm going to put that unit of infantry is going to go forward, so then my 2 Shermans can come up, they can pour fire on that position, and then the infantry can go in. You can do that in Ironcross. There's no random activation. You're not waiting for a certain card to turn up. That might never turn up. You're not waiting for something to come out of the bag to activate your unit. You can always plan forward and actually plan structured attacks and defenses. But your opponent's doing that all the time as well.
Yeah,
he's doing the same with his defense or his counter attack.
So as you say, you've always ultimately got this decision of whether to press forward. And try and press your advantages as much as possible, knowing that you're leaving yourself open to what happens next.
Absolutely.
Or just being a little bit more cautious.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the basic rules. You've hinted you're working on some extra supplements for it. Okay, first off, as far as Ironcross itself is concerned, when are we likely to see it?
End of October, start of November. We're hoping to have it released at Crisis in Antwerp.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And how much do I have to pay you?
I'm going to estimate the cost of the book at £12.
And is that released as a softback book, and is it released or hardback, and is it released as a PDF?
It's a softback book only. That's the only format it's going to come in.
All right, so not electronic at all, just a softback book.
No, do you know what? I'm still waiting for people to convince me of the viability of doing it as a PDF as well. I'm not sure. I'm coming round to the idea because I know how many people like to use tablets with their wargaming. So if we could find the proper platform, then it's something we'd seriously consider.
I was going to say it saves me getting a hernia carrying all my rule books around with
Yeah.
It's only 32 pages, so I'm sure you'll manage.
My general feeling on that is that having tried playing quite a lot of rules off tablet, I much prefer having a physical book to thumb through.
Yeah, I'm a bit old-fashioned.
But if I'm sitting at the computer designing a scenario, it's much easier having a PDF copy to read through, which is why if you did both, I'd buy both.
Yeah. Excellent.
Right. There you go, marketing for you. Okay, so 32-page book launching at Crisis. Right, so you've already hinted that there are other things in the works as far as this is concerned. Now, are these going to take the form of simple like army list books, or is it going to be more of a case of, okay, we're going to be looking at campaigns sort of thing?
Well, I should mention that we're working with Foreground to have a couple of sets of tokens. So your command tokens will be a pack that you can get from us for a few quid.
Oh, great!
And there'll be one per army, so they'll be themed.
That's cool. Yeah.
And the morale markers are just simple little morale markers to put beside your vehicle, so they'll be available. But I'll let Darryl answer the second part if he wishes to.
Yeah, I guess it's in discussion, so like most things Iron Cross, we'll perhaps take our time and think it through, make sure we get it right. But a period I'm sort of really enjoying at the moment, I'm just sat on next to my painting table looking across at some Sikhs for the Desert War, Western Desert. So I'd like to do maybe a campaign book built around that. Obviously, some different army lists, which is quite different to Late War, which is in the rule book. Maybe also do some stuff which is based on specific units. So I don't know, sort of hardcore SS or British Paras or I don't know, American Rangers who've got some slightly different abilities to actually use a bit more flavour for different units and expand out that way. So different ways we can go. So maybe visit the Great Escape Games Facebook page and stick some suggestions on there. Yeah, I think we're open to ideas.
All right, because my immediate thought is that if you said, okay, what we're doing Western Front, 44, 45, the first thing that people are going to jump them down and go, okay, so where are the powers? Where are your hardcore Panzer Grenadiers? Where are your Volkssturm units?
So you can play all those at the moment. So we touched on earlier about one of the basic differences between different types of units. So if you do take, Volks Grenadiers and the Ardennes Forest, maybe got a bit of a bad rap. Maybe you just take one or two command tokens less, or if you're fielding British Paras, you take one or two command tokens more. And that's all the very simple change you can make as a house rule until we've got our heads around maybe what some of these different flavours are for the different types of unit available.
Yeah, we've got I've got about 30 different lists for different periods and types of formations that each have a little rule to make them less effective or more effective, and they're all very simple. So it's the kind of things that Darryl's already and you yourselves have already suggested in order to make units more or less effective. Because really, it's usually most often it's down to training, which decides their effectiveness.
One thing I don't like about some war games is you have to go and buy a load of extra books to get all the extra rules for this particular type of army. And so you're constantly spending loads and loads of money to play the game. I just prefer to get the basic rule book, know what you're doing, and if there's something that's a little bit different, it's something you can pick up on a web forum somewhere. Maybe it's a house rule that someone else has thought up. You just then apply that rule with some of the agreement of the other players that you're playing against. That's that sort of approach I'd like to take with this. So not overcomplicate it. And it's something that Stuart and I haven't discussed at any great depth so far. So again, open to ideas about how we approach it. But maybe it's just going to be a single PDF with some different flavours in there. So a handful of rules for a handful of different types of units. Or it might be a campaign book, or it might be both. But yeah, open to ideas.
I think at this level of granularity, you have the advantage that an American infantry squad is an American infantry squad. You know, the fact that it's an American infantry squad yomping its way up Italy or hopping across islands in the Pacific isn't going to make it, in the granularity of the rules you've got, that different.
No.
Yeah, and again, similarly, when it boils down to elite units, it actually boils down to issues with command control and morale.
Yep.
As opposed to, what those units are armed with.
Which is actually the player themselves rather than the models on the table. So if you're some sort of numpty who's making bad decisions, then your elite paras are never going to beat the Volks Grenadiers.
But when Neil's point is actually very valid. When it comes down to it, that elite unit of US Rangers compared to an ordinary unit of PDIs is still pretty much got the same thing slung around its neck and over its shoulder. It's just got several more command dice.
Yeah, and that's often a way of sorting it out. And we've done it before in loads of our games, especially our bigger games. We've had a unit of partisans on the table, or some British paras have been surrounded, and you have to try and prevent them being totally cut off. And we've just assigned extra dice, extra command tokens, or we've said maybe they get to reactivate. When they reactivate, they get +1 to the dice roll. So in effect, they can activate twice for no dice roll. And that sorts a lot of it out as well. So it's very, very easy to represent elite troops.
And you also don't get the horrible, what I call the N-squared problem, where you're playing special troops X out of supplement Y against special troops Z out of supplement Z.
Yeah.
And you have to work out whether their special rules interact.
Oh, I hate
and if so, how?
Yeah.
Not mentioning any names, shames of gore.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
You know my opinion.
So, end of October for Iron Cross, and then it's very much a case of wait and see. Can you tease us with what's coming next then? Because you said, we're looking at producing something in April. Can you tease us with that at all, or is that still kind of under wraps?
Yeah, sure. I've got no secrets. Well, around the same time as Iron Cross, of course, we've got Sword and Spear, which come out around the same time. But what we're working on now, all the figures are finished for it now, and the rules are well on the way. The working title is The Chicago Way, and that is obviously 1920s. So we've got gangsters, and they're in cars. And it's going to be the same sort of style of gaming as Dead Man's Hand, so it's very cinematic. Everybody loves gangster movies. There are lots of cool stuff you can do with gangsters. They look cool. The cars are cool. You can do different scenarios. We know the kind of scenarios we'll be doing. And it's a very interesting period. And of course,
Dead Man's Hand in a sharp suit.
Yeah.
I like it.
So while there is that nod to, and we could technically still claim to be in historical gaming, yes, it's very cinematic, it's very dramatic, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
And that's aiming for Salute?
Yes.
Oh, superb.
Yes, yeah, that's going to be all ready for Salute, because as I said, there are 4 gangs of figures coming out, plus a couple of extra figures, 4 cars, I think 4 or 5 buildings.
I was going to say, are you doing the same sort of thing that you did with Dead Man's Hand, that you're actually producing a set of associated buildings with it as well? Yeah,
we're again working with our great friends from Foreground, because they're so ace, and we're doing a load of buildings now. We're not going to be taking it into the courtrooms in the center of Chicago, so we're not going to have massive giant buildings, because I think they're probably unaffordable for most people if you're presenting a scenario, a kind of tablescape like that. So there are plenty of other gangster era films, and if you look at lots of them, and you look at some of the actual history, which you look at a bit of that, a lot of it's at dock sides. It's outside of towns. It's in the hills. It's where people have all the illegal stills. So there are all sorts of locations that you can have these sorts of games and scenarios, and we're going to explore some of those that are outside what you might first think of when you think of gangster films and Al Capone coming down the stairs of a hotel.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is you don't have to be able to recreate the centre of Chicago in order to play this game.
Exactly.
Good.
I do have this sudden terrifying vision of the RAF Wargamers guys producing Bugsley Malone with those rules. Because you know they will.
Yeah.
What complete with song and dance? Yes.
I don't know what we're going to do about splurge guns.
Got to have an option rule in there.
Right. Okay. So that's coming in April. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
Yeah. That does sound seriously good. Right then, guys. Is there anything else you guys want to cover? Is there anything else we've missed?
If you want to come and see a little bit about Iron Cross, talk to us. I think we've got a demo game on at Crisis. I'm pretty sure we've got a demo game going on at Warfare. There may be one. I think there's one at Derby as well. Which is in a few weeks from the time we're recording this. So we'll be playing a few demo games. There's some stuff online about Iron Cross if you go to our Facebook page or into our main website, greatescapegames.co.uk. There's a couple of sample battle reports and FAQs on there, so you can learn a little bit more about it.
Cool. And so available at the end of October. And is it just going to be available from Great Escape, or is it from all your local?
Any retailer that wants to get it will be using distributors. So we'll be using North Star. If your retailers get their stuff through North Star or the various ones in the USA like eFigures or Warpath in the USA and War and Peace Games in Australia, and there'll be some other European distributors with it as well. Hopefully we'll get it translated into a couple of languages as well.
Is that likely to happen in time for release, or is that something you're looking forward? It's going to be after.
Yeah, it'll be
post-release.
Yeah, it'll be after. We've got a good relationship with a couple of companies in Spain, France, Germany, who have translated Dead Man's Hand, are translating some of the other Dead Man's Hand books, and we'll look forward to working with them again. They're interested.
Good stuff. Well, Stuart, Darryl, it's been fantastic to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Yes, indeed.
It sounds really good. I can't wait to try it. Really.
Amen.
It does sound really good, really intriguing. And as I say, it's one of those things of, can a World War II war game really be that simple?
Only one way to find out, guys, isn't there? Get stuck in, have a go. Yeah.
Oh, believe me, I intend to.
Oh, certainly. So thanks very much for coming on the show. We shall look forward to playing them. Thank you very much for talking to us. All the best with the launch of the rules. And no doubt we shall speak once... next time we speak, we can talk all about gangsters.
Excellent.
And so we're back, and via the magic of podcasting and editing, we're actually recording this last section after we've had a break from chatting to Stuart and Darryl, and we've actually had a chance to go away and cogitate and
calm down
and play and calm down. Yes. What was it? Wipe down with the damp edition of the Radio Times or whatever it used to be.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah. But we've had a chance to go. Well, basically, we've had a chance to go away and have a look at the rules and dabble with a few things and have a play around with a few things, and come back and so actually have a bit more of an informed discussion because when we actually recorded the interview, we had the rules presented to us about, I don't know, probably about half an hour before we started chatting.
That.
Yeah, so it was a bit...
it's a good job I speed read.
Yes, it was a bit on the fly. It was a bit on the fly. But I mean, having said that, great conversation with Stuart and Darryl. Sounds really, really interesting. So, having read, cogitated, dabbled, played around, etc., what now are our thoughts about Iron Cross?
First reaction, I have to say, is really nice production values, even for a small rulebook. It looks pucker. Okay, so we don't know what the cover looks like, but
we do actually.
Oh, well, right. You know what the cover looks
I know.
like. I don't.
Basically, it's a black cover with an Iron Cross on it.
Oh, very classy.
Yes.
Very, very, very squad leader.
It is. It is somewhat retro, yes.
This is no bad thing. But the rules, beautifully laid out, nice typesetting. Let's be honest, it's 32 pages of rules, of which only 10 are actually rules. You almost don't need an index. But it's sensibly laid out, it's easy to find stuff. It's quite nicely illustrated. They've done the classic thing of having a couple of characters' quotes, giving you little sort of tactical tips and advice like the Saga book does, among other things. It's all nice and clear. I mean, it will be hard to get it wrong, let's face it.
I mean, obviously, we've only seen the PDF, but we can you can probably see from what it's looking at, it's going to be just like Dead Man's Hand.
Yeah.
So from that side of things, it's going to be a similar sort of quality. To that, great. That's fine. How about the rules themselves? What do you think?
I haven't had occasion, unfortunately, had occasion to test them since I was playing Chain of Command last week, but still, I'm reading through. They look like they should work. Yeah,
no, I agree. I do like the interactiveness.
Yes,
it is one of these things where, unlike some games where you can sneak away for a quick beverage or a quick comfort break, you cannot afford to take your eyes off this game.
Do that and you'll lose.
Yeah, because
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this whole idea. I mean, in my last miniature war games column, I was talking about different ways of activation, and the fact that ultimately, the ideal is trying to replicate simultaneous or pretty much simultaneous actions. Without the use of an umpire. I mean, Henry kind of reminded me, he said, actually, back in the day, they all used to do it. It was just a case of everybody had written orders.
Yeah, exactly. I used to play Research Group Ancients, and the convention was you wrote down your orders, and then they all happened simultaneously.
Yeah. I must admit, I was never a fan of written orders.
Oh, I don't know. They have a certain something, but...
To be honest, especially... back in the day, I used to go through rules, and as soon as the point where I mentioned we now have written orders and we use an umpire, I kind of went, no, maybe not. But I was young.
What can we say?
What can we say? These days, and given the whatever generation of rules writing we're in, the
fourth or fifth,
yeah, something like that. In what we were saying about it, this whole thing of actually getting to the point of having almost simultaneous activation. Well, this game is almost as close as you're going to get to it. When basically you're in a situation where one side is technically always on Overwatch.
Yeah.
The non-active player is always on Overwatch. Can't afford to be away from the game. It makes the whole thing incredibly interactive.
And it's quick.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But the price you pay, and it's an inevitable price for anything quick, is that you are playing at, if you like, a slightly larger granularity. You're an infantry, as we discussed in the chat with Stuart, an infantry squad is an infantry squad. It really doesn't model, and it probably, to be fair, doesn't have to model the fact that your US paras with carbines are different from your Russian squad to your bunch of Panzer Grenadiers, etc., etc., etc. And the differences you can reflect with command tokens. The vehicles, they've they've done a little bit, but I think there's a degree to which, even on the Western Front, you have to somehow categorise the fact that when the guy rolls out a panther, if you haven't got a firefly, you're in trouble. And so there are, but again, it's down to single stat per weapon, ranges that cover the whole table, and it's got this little thing that rules writers seem to love these days, that every vehicle or some vehicles have an extra adjective. For instance, tigers are categorised as heavy, Ferdinands are categorised as heavy and rare, that kind of thing. And there's a little custom rule for that. But fundamentally, I mean, your army list, your force list is one line per common thing that you probably find in the force. And it doesn't need any more for this scale and granularity of rules.
Yeah, I did. It has to be said, I did kind of find the army lists vanilla, and actually, other than the fact of they're obviously differentiated between different types of vehicles, and there is a difference between. The only difference in infantry squads is it essentially boils down to how many of your infantry squads can carry anti-tank weapons.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're pretty much the same. And also, actually, there's not a lot of difference in the army list as provided as far as command difference. So, for example, the Soviet army operates pretty much the same as the German army. And to be honest, whilst I understand why they've done it, for me that causes a bit of an issue. But
there are ways around it.
Well, there are ways. Yeah, there are ways around it. I think this is something that
if you want, for example, the obvious case for the Russians, where fundamentally you should be moving around in larger units and not as well commanded, you just give them fewer dice, and then they have to start using the move three with 2 dice thing.
Yeah, tokens, not dice.
Tokens, yeah. Right,
you're in cock mode, aren't you?
Steady.
Yeah, sorry, chain of command mode. Yeah.
Yes, I am. I was playing it last week. So, yeah, but you basically, you do it by, if you reduce the number of tokens the Russians have, you can simulate the command problems and by forcing them to use the move 3 with 2 tokens thing a lot more. And equally, if you've got British paras, you give them more command tokens, and you simulate quite effectively the fact that they have more firepower by the fact that with more command tokens, they can fire more often.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, yes, it is a simple fix, but it's not out of the tin, or out of the box, if you like.
I'm actually going to disagree with you there. The whole concept of command tokens is so integral to the game that it's something that you once you've actually... I mean, I haven't played it, you haven't played it. I'm pretty sure from reading the rules... You've dabbled. It was dabbled.
I dabbled with it. Yeah. I mean, there's dabbled, and there's had a full game with it. And to be honest,
stuck in. But my reading of the rules,
I'm hoping to get a full game of it on Sunday, which may very well change my opinion on.
Yeah. My reading of the rules is that command tokens are so vitally important to the way force balance and play ends up that once you get it, they are the mechanism by which you can represent the difference in feel between different forces.
Yeah,
I may be wrong.
I
don't think I am.
Yeah, they are one of these classic subtle mechanics that you don't actually potentially realise exactly the full subtlety of it until until you've gone through it a few times and kind of go, "Oh, hang on a minute."
Yeah.
As I say, that said, it sounds. I don't want it to sound like a harsh criticism because it's a minor thing. I just found from the force point of view, and again, I suppose it's one of these things. I think with the fact of the design spec that they worked with, and the design spec that they wanted to keep to, it's almost like they provided you with, okay, here's the rules, here's the framework, here's the toolkit, go away and play.
But we should emphasise it's not a tournament set of rules.
Oh no.
No.
I mean, yeah, and this is the thing. It says, you're looking at the army lists. If you're a tournament player, you could drive a truck through them. But it's not designed. But that's the thing. It's not. It's designed as. This was really interesting. It was something that was funny enough. Henry Hyde flagged up on on a post in the week, and it was almost like the difference between rules written by produced by US companies and rules written by UK companies, and part of the difference is in prescriptive. Is whether the rules are prescriptive or not, or the inference of it doesn't say I can't do that, therefore I can, as opposed to it doesn't say I can't. It doesn't say I can do that. I can do that, therefore I can't.
Or there's the Rich Clark mode, which is what do the words say, which is somewhere between the two.
Yes.
I always found with Rich the thing to do is to read the rules, because the rules do actually tell you what you can and can't do.
Yes, but so, yeah, as you say, it's definitely a set of rules that is designed to turn around and say, and to be fair, when you start looking at things like Orbats and stuff, it turns around and says, well, this is a list, and yes, we provided points, but at the end of the day, if you're writing scenarios, you should put in force restrictions,
or even if you're just running a map campaign.
Yeah.
This is perfect, as I said earlier, for something like our map campaign, because two forces have met on a map. Let's put them on the table using the force lists.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. So from that sort of things, I agree. As you say, probably it's a case of the perhaps unseen subtleties that we have yet to expand on.
But this is not a check your brain at the door and replace it with your spreadsheet or pocket calculator set of rules. This does require you to build forces that at least nod at history and preferably are done with your brain turned on.
Yes, and I think if you did that, it would be a much better game. But the game does not force you to do it,
no.
And that is either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on where you're coming from.
Yes, sorry, bolt action players, you're not going to like it. Or alternatively, you're going to love it because you can completely screw with your force lists, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I think that will immediately catch so many people out. Is and especially when you start, I mean, obviously, one thing is obvious from reading the rules is that these guys like playing big games, and when when they basically turn around and say, well, you could get away on a 6x4 playing 15 mil. Although to be honest, having played Chain of Command in 15 mil, putting more than a platoon on the table actually starts to look wrong. The battlefield starts to look far too crowded, but. Yeah, when they start talking about playing on an 8x6 or even a 12x8 table.
12x8 is a bit tricky to reach the middle of, but I take your point.
Yeah, or 8x6, 12x6, big tables.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can certainly see people getting caught out by the fact of they are moving a tank along one side of a table, and all of a sudden they get shot from the other side of the table, and we are talking perhaps 10 feet away.
Welcome to Normandy.
Yeah.
Speaking as someone who lost a Cromwell to a Panther across the width and half the diagonal of a 6 foot table last week, I know exactly where you're coming from.
Oh, so that Panther sat on the hill was... Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, yes, Mike tweeted a picture of his Chain of Command game going on, and
I read... Big Chain of Command.
It was a big Chain of Command game.
No, it was big Chain of Command. It was two platoons and a tank platoon against one platoon and a tank platoon.
Oh, right, okay. And he tweeted this picture, and at one point, and I was looking at the picture, and suddenly went, hang on a second, is that a panther on the hill in the corner?
It was, and it hurt.
It's like, I really want to... and it's a panther on a hill. And running right across the middle of the table are these line of white half tracks.
M5s, yep.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yes, it was British, sorry, M5s.
Yeah.
And but I was like, I really wouldn't want to be in them at the moment.
Nope. Well, one of them got by the panther. The other got ambushed by a Panzerschreck in the forest that it parked next to.
Oh dear!
It was painful.
Yeah.
But the point we were actually making there is that those ranges are entirely realistic.
Indeed, yeah. Stupidly enough, I was, and as part of the review, I was looking about. Hang on a second. So we all know about the infamous killing ranges of an 88mm, and the fact that it can potentially knock a Sherman out from 2,000 yards.
My favourite I ain't been shotgun scenario, in fact, has an 88 for which you have a card but no model. Because it's about 10 feet off table down the road. Oh,
right, okay. Yeah. Now the thing is that even effective range of a Sherman 75. Okay, Sherman 75mm was it's on paper. As opposed to in practice, on paper it was supposed to penetrate something like. I think it's about 70 mm of armour at 1,000 yards.
1,000 yards on a chain of command table. A chain of command ground scale is 12 feet.
Yes. So it could certainly go a good way to penetrate. For a Sherman 75 would go a good way to penetrating the side armour of a Panzer IV, for example.
Yeah.
Across a 12-foot table.
Yeah.
And that is something that that will for an awful lot of people be a bit of a wake up call, but I actually quite find really refreshing. I do. I love it. And
because let's face it, when you're talking about most of the World War II theatres of war, your range is not really determined by how far your bullet will travel. It's really determined by how far you can be away and still get a good bead on the target.
Yes.
Which is why, if you look at most of my World War II tables, whatever game I'm playing, they are packed with scenery.
Yeah, I mean people. So I'm talking. That's talking. Excuse me. That's talking. Tank guns. The good old Lee Enfield has a kill range of 1 mile.
Yeah.
That's why it was used as a British Army sniper rifle until not that long ago.
Absolutely.
Because okay, it has to be a good shot. However, effective ranges of especially say rifles and machine guns, it's an awful lot further than people give it credit for.
It's can you see it?
Yes.
No, can you reach it?
And so having that frame of reference on a table, it forces you to change your perspective, rather than I can move with impunity because I'm out of range. It changes your perspective. Yes, on this side, even on this size table, there is no such thing as being out of range.
Changes your perspective in a very good way.
Indeed. Yeah, it does. It does because, and I know we talk about it a lot, but the infamous 24-inch rifle range or 24-inch weapon range. That it's not only bolt action. There are an awful lot of games that adopt 24, 30 inches for and within their design philosophy, I suppose they have a very good reason to.
Yeah, the assumption is that your ground scale is so compacted that. But it does turn you into playing the kind of tactics where you go, haha, I'm out of range.
Yes.
Where as opposed to the tactic that is considerably more authentic to the period, which is, haha, I'm behind some bocage.
Yes, you can't see. Yes. All of a sudden, scenery becomes an awful lot more important.
Yeah.
So that, especially that aspect, I love. I really, really love. And as I say, I'm sure that some people playing it for the first time in the first turn will get really caught out by that. But having said that, it's a lesson people will learn really, really quickly, because otherwise they'll get their force completely shredded. But yeah, as I say, a good lesson to learn.
Yes.
Right. Now, I do potentially have another couple of issues.
Far away.
And I'll be interested to know your thoughts. Now, this troubled me so much that I actually went away this week and did some research. Okay, which is quite worrying. And of course, the other thing is that being on the back end of some very good work by a certain British Powers player. Yes, my my experience of smoke and the use of smoke on the battlefield, say it has been tempered. Well, I mean, okay. First off, by the fact I play a lot of Chain of Command, and to be fair, I think Rich Clark has done a fantastic job in playing, especially how the British platoon uses their 2-inch mortar.
Yeah.
It is a nightmare to play against if somebody plays it right. Absolute nightmare. Right.
You start husbanding the Chain of Command dice to make them blooming smoke go away.
Oh, it's horrible. However, right, okay, so this is learning from bitter experience. But I also went away and looked at combat doctrine for German troops, and I mean, okay, I know that the Germans didn't provide smoke for their 50mm mortars, and neither did the Americans for their 60mm mortars. But
nope,
they both used smoke because the US used 4.2 their 4.2 mortar. 4.2-inch mortar was, put it this way, it was grouped into chemical weapons batteries.
I say it's the infamous chemical mortar, isn't it?
It is the chemical mortar, but
the difference is, and I suspect I know what you're going to say. The difference is, for the British, smoke is a very local thing.
Put it this way. Also, Germans tended to use smoke from Nebelwerfers. As opposed to mortars. But, right, okay. Why am I talking about smoke?
You know why that is, don't you? You know what Nebelwerfer means?
Well, yeah.
Cloud thrower.
Cloud thrower, yes. It was only the fact that they adapted it to...
throw things other than
clouds.
Yes.
Yes. Right, okay. So, and they had special... the Germans had special units using Nebelwerfers, which were there for laying smoke. Mm-hmm. But what I'm getting at is combat doctrines of World War II armies and use of smoke were offensive, i.e. you laid smoke on the enemy.
Yeah.
Okay? Now...
The rules
don't
actually say that. The rules don't...
No, what the rules say is that the smoke, you drop use of smoke, you drop smoke grenades on your own units to conceal them.
To quote exactly from the rules, all units are able to utilise smoke to conceal their position.
And when you use it, you put a smoke marker in front of your unit. And I know this sounds really pedantic, but that fundamentally changes your tactics.
I had not spotted that.
Because what ends up in a situation is you start using smoke defensively to conceal yourself, whereas the actual tactics for using smoke were to lay smoke on the enemy, so the enemy could not fire, but you could still move, and the enemy still couldn't see you. Whereas in this particular instance, what happens is you put smoke in front of yourself,
and now you can't move.
Yeah, you immediately root yourself to the ground. Not only can you not move, but you can't see anything coming at you. And, there's a part of me which really kind of goes, Neil, you're being really, really, really pedantic about this and get over yourself. But there's another part of me which says, I'm sorry, but this is fundamentally wrong. And it does change the tactics of how you do it to the point where it's almost useless. And I'm kind of going... But there's another bit that's arguing, it's such a small thing, and within the scope of the rules, does it really matter that much?
Yes.
So that is...
Shut up, Neil. Yes, it does.
Yeah. Sorry. You may have gathered I've been cogitating on this for several days.
Yeah. No, I had not noticed this, and you are absolutely right. The other thing that the smoke rule is very... it's one of those rules that is very generic. It's not local tactical doctrine specific. And the distinction I was going to make is the fact that British smoke is a very local thing. It's per platoon. The lieutenant or whoever in the corner can scream his head off until he gets smoke where he wants it. The Germans and the Americans, it sounds like it's much more, we will now lay smoke on this position and then attack it.
Yes.
Grand tactical approach. You wouldn't catch, well, you probably would, but it's a much less immediate thing. You're not going to catch the German Feldwebel grabbing his radio and screaming for a smoke barrage. It'll have been pre-planned. Whereas the British approach is much more flexible. And this is possibly, I think, one of the isolated cases where you could make a case that there should be a note with the army list noting how the various forces use smoke.
Now, again, maybe this is coloured by the fact that we've both been playing a set of rules that gets it right. And so, and because it sounds like we've both been on the receiving end of it.
More than one, in fact.
Yeah. Oh yes, quite. Yeah, but but I don't know. It's something that screamed out at me, and I kind of went, yeah, okay. So put that to one side. It's part of a slightly bigger issue. This again, I think we potentially disagree on this, but bigger thing. Now I know right at the start, and a conversation we had very early on with Stuart and Darryl was regarding artillery and the availability or lack thereof of artillery in the game. Now, we realised very early in the conversation we had with Stuart and Darryl, they were very quick to point out that as far as they were concerned, the design philosophy around Iron Cross surrounded infantry and tank combat. Okay. And as such, and Stuart admitted that he knows how important artillery was, but we wanted to basically put it to one side because as far as they were concerned, they wanted to concentrate on tanks and infantry. Okay. All that said, okay, now they have catered for mortars, and again, you probably heard that Stuart kind of went, yeah, we kind of catered for mortars. Perhaps slightly glitchy. I think the Wilson mortars are fairly rudimentary, and again, maybe this is coloured by plain chain of command, where being on the receiving end of a medium mortar barrage is a thing of fear. I've been on the receiving end, and I've given one, and the first time it happens to you, you kind of go, yeah, it's a bit of a surprise because they're not nice. However, right, what I'm getting at here is, especially when you're playing company level, mortars were integral artillery support at company level. You move up to battalion level, and artillery support is almost taken as read. You're gonna have whether it's your pack howitzers, whether it's heavy mortars, whether it's your 105mm sat somewhere. They are going to be your support. They are going to be fire support now, and now, I'm fully open to say I'm sorry you're wrong on this, but I think that actually, if you game at company to battalion level, the combat doctrine of artillery support, and especially mortar support, is so intrinsic to what went on that if you ignore it, with whatever caveats involved, if you ignore it, all of a sudden, this whole thing of playing the period, are you suddenly playing the period anymore? And it's all to do with how far you take combat doctrines into your gaming and whether or not it's important to you or not. And that is something that was just been in the back of my mind. I mean, stupidly enough, okay, now you may turn around and go, hang on, this is a crazy example and you're out your league here. I just happened to watch We Were Soldiers again at the weekend. Now, I've seen it a few times, I've read the book a couple of times, and personally I think it actually does a fairly good job. Now, I know it's Vietnam, so, we're moving on 20 years. But during that particular engagement, artillery support and air support kept the Americans alive.
Yeah.
It was absolutely vital. Now, I know they weren't using armour, but artillery support and mortar support kept them in the battle. Now,
and if you go back to my favourite book, Ken Maxey's Battle, which admittedly is a fictitious encounter, the weapon that pretty much does the most damage to the British forces in their attack is what would in most systems equivalent be an off-table 8-centimetre mortar battery and a foo.
Yeah. Now, I know
the thing that does the most damage to the Germans is a bunch of 25-pounders and a foo.
Well, yes. Now, I know that, right at the beginning, as I've already said, Stuart had a caveat to say we wanted to reflect infantry and tank combat, and as such, we took artillery out of we effectively pretty much took artillery out of the game. I don't know. And again, whether it's just me, you can turn, and everybody, you can turn around to me and go, Neil, you're just being an idiot, or you're being overly pedantic about this. But if you're playing World War II, especially at battalion level, I think you struggle.
That said, once you have got used to the system and got a better appreciation for how casualties pile up according to the combat mechanism, it is almost certainly not beyond the wit of man to put them back in.
And to be fair, you could probably certainly see somewhere along the line a supplement coming out with artillery rules in it. Or, as I say, you could write them yourselves. But again, and I think this is where, and this is, I think again, this is why this is why they're not there. Is that and as Stuart said, most combat casualties, and he's right, most combat casualties in the Second World War came from artillery. It has the potential to be a complete game changer anytime you use it.
Yeah.
But as you say, my only question is that at that level, if you don't have it, is the game still authentically World War II? And actually, does it really matter?
Yes, the follow-up question to that, is the game still fun?
Yes.
Which I suspect the answer is yes. And you are, gentle listener, going to have to make your own call on that one.
Indeed. I mean, okay, so those are my particular gripes. I struggle losing artillery out at that level of game. I struggle with the Orbats, and I struggle especially with tactical use of smoke. Okay, that basically covers, I don't know, 10%, 5%, 10% less than of what is otherwise a really good game. And actually, especially if you're a gamer who wants to play a bit of World War II and fancies getting all your toys out on the table,
and doesn't have much time,
and doesn't have all day in which to do it, absolutely superb.
Absolutely. It's a great set of rules for a nice big sprawling World War II game on a club night.
Indeed, yeah.
The real acid question is, knowing, as I'm sure most of our listeners do, that I'm a diehard laddie and I will play Chain of Command and IAB and Shotgun at the drop of a hat, the answer to the question, would I play them, is, oh, hell yes.
Oh, certainly, yeah. I mean, they are, as I say, I'd probably go as far to say they're the best set of non-Loddy World War II rules I've seen.
Yeah, unquestionably. And to be fair, also,
I'll take that with a caveat, because battle group because the battle group set of rules are very, very good, but they do things very
massively differently.
And there is a particular reason behind that, because of the design philosophy. So yes, battle group are very good. However, different design philosophy. Yeah.
And if I wanted to do battalion scale, unless I had an entire weekend on the world's biggest table, I'd play this.
Yes, because
certainly as opposed to Blitzkrieg Commander.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Which is the other obvious candidate at this scale, unless you're going off into heaven knows what else. What else is there?
I mean, things like rapid fire.
Suppose,
like that. That's to say, it's at this sort of level. You're looking. It's rapid fire, battle group commander. Sorry, battle group commander.
BKC.
No, Blitzkrieg commander.
Yeah.
Battle group. And I ain't been shotman. Although really, again, I mean, I ain't been shotman. He's really aimed at the low end of this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's company plus.
Yes.
It's battalion.
Whereas this really is when it says company plus, it means plus.
Yeah, the distinction, the big distinction here is that you can play this with 6 or 7 players around the table without an umpire. If you wanted to play company plus with if that's, company pushing battalion with I Ain't Been Shot Mum, then you need an umpire, because by far the best way of getting around it with I Ain't Been Shot Mum is to sneak pre-looks at activation cards and go, that's not going to affect this half of the table here, get on with that.
Yes. Whereas this operates so quickly, that and essentially, as they recommend, it'll support multiplayer, and you just give command sheets out to sub-commanders and say, okay, get on with your bit, stuff like this. And that sort of thing really works.
It's really nice. In summary, go and buy it. It's dirt cheap. It's really easy to learn. And it looks like it should be an absolute belter.
And with that, I think we're about done, don't you?
I do believe we are.
Well, what's left to be said is thank you to Mike for joining me.
You are as ever welcome.
And thank you to Stuart and Darryl for joining us and sharing Iron Cross with us. Actually, really interesting set of rules. And finally, thank you to everybody for listening, and hope you've really enjoyed the show and found it helpful. So, until next time, take care.
Or at the Herald War Games show if you're coming.
Indeed.
We'll see you then.
We'll see you there, and take care. Happy gaming. We'll speak to you soon. Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you want to know more about Meeples and Miniatures, there are several things you can do. First of all, you can visit the website at www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. If you want to contact the show at all, you can email me at neil@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. You can follow the show on Twitter. Simply look for M&M Podcast, or click the follow us on Twitter button from the website. We also have a group on Facebook. That's the Meeples and Miniatures Podcast Fan Club. Again, follow the link from the website. And finally, if you want to help to support the show, you can always donate to the podcast by clicking the PayPal button on the donate page, again found on the website. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed the show. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.